Hi, this is Sean Clancy, and I am recording a presentation on two people within the games industry. The first person is Thronton. He is a former UCLAN student and alumni, and currently works as the Associate Chief Designer at Playground Games, and is currently working on the Fable game that will be coming out in 2021. Some history about Steve. He again is a graduate from UCLAN with a master's in game design. He did several interns at TT Games while at UCLAN, finally scoring a job at the internship in 2008 when he was working on the Guinness World Records, the video game, while he was doing QA, testing all the mini games within that game. As he worked there from 2008 to 2016, he worked on several major titles such as the Lego Star Wars franchise, the Lego Rock Band. He worked on Lego Avengers and the Lego Movie video game. In 2016, he left his job at TT Games to move to Russia to join Surfasoft, which is a company that is an external company for other developers to work with to help the developers realize how to make their games. Steve was the lead game lead game developer on several titles such as Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, and also the Lego Movie video game. In 2020, Steve returned to England as he managed to get a job with Playground Games as the associate chief designer, working on an unnamed title, which was announced as Fable 21. Also mentioned while at Surfasoft, Steve worked on Halo Infinite. Some notable titles. 2015, he was the lead game designer at Star Wars The Force Awakens. In 2016, he was the lead game designer at Rainbow Six Siege. 2018, he was also the lead game designer on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And then currently, he is the associate chief designer on the new Fable game. So when looking at design outlook and approach that Steve follows, he released a video online for a game jam where he did a online talk talking about the rules of engagement in game design, and it was used basically to show people how to keep players engaged while playing the level and not lose interest. He established several rules. The first one being establish a language for the player to understand. So one way of doing that is the affordance of an item, which basically means if you pick up a gun, generally means that you're going to shoot something. If you pick up a key, it generally means you're going to unlock something. So if you find a key, you're going to try and look for a door or a lock. The second rule was to establish the rules, which basically mean if you jump off a building, do you die? Or in other ways, like how does the elements of the world react? Like in most worlds, water will put out fire, or fire will beat ice. And the next rule would be consistent. So, for example, talking about doors, with doors that can be interactive, they would all. It's best to have them all look the same, so the player can learn, that's a door I can interact with. While having a door that isn't interactive, should look differently, so the player doesn't start getting frustrated by checking every door because it's not a real door. Pardon me. The fourth would be skill checks. So example would be precision or dexterity. Dexterity could be a timing of a jump puzzle and using your dexterity to make a cross, which would test a player capability but would increase intensity as well. Or precision would be shooting targets that are very far away and hard to hit. Next one would be applying pressure. One example would be such as limiting the time on a certain section, so forcing the player to act. Or another one could be the player losing a lot of health and causing the player to change their play style. The sixth rule was to mix up, so to have a mixture of fast and slow moments, as if you have just constant high engagement over time, the player's brain will start to get a bit frazzled and they'll lose concentration. So the next person is Naoki Yoshida, otherwise known as Yoshi P. He is a game director and producer. He's currently on the board of directors for Square Enix. Yoshida first started making games when he was 11, when his uncle gave him a PC, and he learned how to program in BASIC, the language. His first game that he created while still at school was a game that was focusing on breaking into a bank's vault. As Yoshi P kind of grew up, he joined Hudson Soft in 1993, where he was assigned to help create the PC Engine, which was a very early engine used back in the 90s. Pardon me. After that, he worked as a scenario writer for the Far Eastern Eden games, and finally worked as a game designer on the Bomberman series. In 2004, he joined Square Enix and worked on the Dragon Quest Battle Road series, and then eventually moved on to working on the Dragon Quest X game as the game designer. In 2010, while still working on the Dragon Quest 10 game, he was moved and became the director and producer of the Final Fantasy XIV MMO, which at that time had released to not so great times, as it was a mess. But the kind of the heads of Square moved him across because he believed that he was passionate and willing to satisfy customers, and that was a real focus to try and turn this MMO around. He spent several years working on kind of the fix to that game, which was called Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, which came out in 2013, and has been mainly credited as rescuing that game from failure. Ever since then, Yoshi P has continued to work as the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV through several expansions, Heavensward in 2015, Stormblood in 2017, Shadowbringers in 2019, and Endwalkers, which will be coming out on the 7th, which is pretty close. He's also just been announced that he's working on Final Fantasy 16, which has not got a release date yet. Some notable titles. In 1999, he was the story mode director for Bomberman 64. In 2012, he was the planner chief in Dragon Quest X. And then from 2013 to 2019, he was the producer in Final Fantasy Final Fantasy 14, though he did start in 2010. It just took till 2013 for A Realm Reborn to release. With the design approach and outlook, there are a few quotes that Yoshi P has said. First one being, unless you are a genius, you cannot make something completely new from nothing, which basically suggests that you can take inspiration from other places, and kind of it's very hard to work alone. He was once asked, he's very player focused. That's shown by an answer that he gave to a player who asked him about about burning out on the game. He said that it's all right not to play the game every day since it's just a game. You can stop. Stop forcing yourself if it's too hard to keep it up. Rather, if you keep playing, it'll just pile up unnecessary stress if you limit yourself into playing just one more game. Since there is just so many games out there, so like do come back when there is like a major content patch, and when there isn't, go play other games before you start to feel burnout, and then come back for another patch. This will actually make me happier, and in the end, I think it's the best solution that I can answer for keeping your motivation in this game. For me, that suggests that he's more focused on keeping the players happy rather than monetary, which is a great sign. A comparison between the two, both have worked long, kind of, long careers within the game industry. Steve working over 10 years, and Yoshida nearing 30 years, I believe. Yeah, nearing 28 years. Thornton's role in the industry has mainly been focusing on game design and has worked on many AAA releases with multiple companies, while Yoshida has mainly was mainly known for working with one company, Square Enix, and has focused in recent times on one particular game, but multiple releases with that game. Um, while both do work in different sectors of the game industry, they both hold the player's experience in high regard, such as trying to keep the player engaged on Steve's side, and on Yoshipi's side, focusing on the caring for the players there. Both are quite active, being interactive with players. Steve using Twitter to interact with people, and Yoshi using a letter from the developer live, which is a live stream every so often where he'll be on for many hours communicating with the community and explaining what's next for the game. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.